Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Item 5 is a public hearing on the Great Seneca Science Corridor Minor Master Plan Amendment. The Fed Committee work session is tentatively scheduled for November 1st, 2021. Ms. Kennedy, could you introduce the public speakers, please?
Yes, good afternoon. Our first speaker for this public hearing is Donna Barron. Ms. Barron, you will have 2 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin when you're ready.
Don't try to unmute yourself.
I did.
When you're ready.
We can hear you.
Are you there, Ms. Barron? Okay, we'll see if our folks in IT can help her along, and we'll move on to Marilyn Balcombe. Ms. Balcombe, you have 2 minutes for your testimony. You may begin as soon as you're ready.
Hi, I'm just to make sure, can you hear me okay?
You sure can.
Hey, hi, my name is Marilyn Balcombe. I'm the president and CEO of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the co-chair of the Great Seneca Science Corridor Implementation Advisory Committee, although today I'm speaking solely on behalf of the Chamber. The Chamber supports the key recommendations outlined in the Minor Master Plan Amendment. The staging requirements in the initial 2010 master plan have been an impediment for development. The inclusion of full funding of the Corridor Cities Transitway as a staging requirement has proved to be unworkable. While the Chamber fully supports the CCT and we have been a primary advocate for the project, it should not specifically be identified as a staging requirement. Montgomery County does not have control over when or if the CCT will be built, which leaves very little control over whether the master plan will ever come to fruition. While we'd hoped that the master plan revision would have eliminated the CCT as a requirement, we agree with the first recommendation to release 400,000 square feet of non-residential development capacity. This is a reasonable interim step, given that the second recommendation is to look at a comprehensive amendment to the full plan. As expressed in the public hearing with the Planning Board in June, once the current recommendation is approved, we ask that the comprehensive review be scheduled as quickly as possible. As we have in the past, the Chamber is eager to participate in the comprehensive review of the master plan. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts today.
Thank you, Ms. Balcombe. Do we have Donna Barron to testify?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, we can hear you. So you may begin as soon as you're ready.
Yes. In one of your documents, you mentioned the area has no cohesive organizing principle. I would submit that the same point could be made for the entire county. The standard operating procedure is to give the developer the go-ahead to jam in lots of buildings cheek to jowl, regardless of whether it's housing or commercial space, with little regard for the aesthetics or connectivity. Looking ahead, Bellward Farm is just about your last chance to do something different and to make a difference. It is a beautiful Civil War era property. Why not make it the cohesive organizing property for the entire county, the piece de resistance, with a world-class health, wellness, and research center, a peaceful area with exceptional architecture, serene landscaping, and open spaces for visitors and patients to walk and heal. Please remove the speedway crossing the farm, opting instead for a safer roadway to connect to the different areas of the farm. The speedway does not belong in a place of healing. Plan instead for those who would occupy and use the property. In addition to Johns Hopkins' current projects, plan for an orthopedic rehab center, a memory care facility, sports medicine, hospice care, imaging and radiology, and a health and wellness research center. Dare to be bold, make a difference, and whatever you do, please do not mess it up like you did with the eastern 35 acres of the farm, which is, I might add, atrocious. Please visit the beautiful Bellward Farm before you make any lasting decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. President, that wraps up the speakers for this public hearing.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you to our speakers. This public hearing is now closed. We can move on to item 6. That is a public hearing on expedited bill 3421, personnel and human resources COVID-19 vaccination required. The GO and HHS committee work session will be scheduled at a later date. Madam Chair, is that the one that's on November 22nd?
Yes.
Okay, it is scheduled for November 22nd now. I updated information. There are a number of public speakers. Councilmember Reamer, did you wish to speak before them or after them?
If I could, please, I'd ask my colleagues for accommodation so I could just make a brief statement.
Sure.
Thank you. Since the beginning of this pandemic, I have been incredibly proud to serve on this council. As a body, we have been laser focused on saving lives and minimizing the damage to our community. Time after time, we've stepped in to address shortcomings in our county's response to ensure that we are fast enough, robust enough, and serve all Montgomery County residents. Our county workforce has done incredible work under terribly difficult circumstances to keep our community safe. But COVID is not done with us yet, and we can't throw in the towel. Employees, their families, and all county residents are still at risk. So I am deeply disturbed that the county executive is resorting to scare tactics about the impact of a vaccination requirement, rather than standing strong as many mayors and governors are doing across the country in the face of anti-vaccine resistance. And I'm disappointed that certain union leaders here in Montgomery County would engage in a right-wing conspiracy theory and attack my family just to try to stop a vaccine requirement that would keep their own members safe. Their advocacy stands in stark contrast to the school employee unions, which have embraced a vaccination requirement enacted by the Board of Education. I want to address this deranged conspiracy theory head on. Yes, as I have disclosed each year on my financial disclosure, my wife works for Pfizer. She has done amazing work, and I'm so proud of her. No, this vaccination requirement has absolutely nothing to do with her job, and my family will not see a dime as a result of it. That's because Pfizer has said they will manufacture 3 billion doses this year and 4 billion doses next year. The federal government long ago agreed to purchase 600 million doses from the various manufacturers. A few hundred additional vaccinations here is a drop of water, not in a bucket, but in an ocean. This county is known for good government, and I take my responsibility to uphold that standard very seriously. So I asked the Ethics Commission for an opinion about these accusations, and they have confirmed that there is no conflict. The opinion states, the commission concludes that the county's vaccine policy does not impact the company, they mean Pfizer. As a consequence, the bar of Section 19A11 does not prohibit the council member from participating in matters relating to whether the county should impose a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our public testimony today.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker for this public hearing is Earl Stoddard. Dr. Stoddard, you have 2 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council President Hucker, Council Vice President Albornoz, and members of the County Council. My name is Earl Stoddard, and I'm the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and I'm here providing testimony on behalf of County Executive Mark Elrich on Expedited Bill 3421, which would impose a vaccine mandate on county employees and mandates discipline measures, including termination for those that do not comply. County Executive Elrich is proud of the enormous efforts undertaken by the county employees during COVID-19 pandemic and the great sacrifices they have made to maintain the delivery of critical services to our residents. Mr. Elrich knows that the council shares the sentiment and appreciates the intent of Bill 3421, but is deeply concerned that the bill as written would create critical challenges to delivery of those essential services. The county executive supports vaccine mandates. We have seen across the country that they result in significantly higher vaccine uptake in places where they are implemented. The county executive's principal concern is the collateral impacts from such from staff loss associated with those personnel who may resign, transfer, retire, or, as would be mandated by the law, be terminated, particularly within the public safety agencies. The council is aware that recruitment and retention in the police department, fire and rescue services, and corrections have been challenges for several years now. In combination with the difficult working environment of the last 20 months, these departments are understaffed and have no choice but to use service reduction tools like overtime, forced holds, and other leave restrictions. On September 27th, County Executive directed frontline agencies to conduct a risk assessment about the range of impacts caused by a potential noncompliance with the vaccine mandate. These reviews were provided to the County Council ahead of this hearing. The key takeaway is that even if a mandate results in 95% or greater compliance, as I suspect it would, 3 to 5% reductions in our public safety programs would be an unsustainable level of that would result in service reductions. It takes time to recruit and train replacement staff, so those impacts would be long lasting. The county executive strongly believes that any personnel reduction reduces public safety coverage, puts our residents at unnecessary risk, and should be avoided. Pursuant to the Public Health Regulation 1975, the implementation of a vaccine or testing plan, the county executive staff are continuing to implement the vaccine and testing plan as required. It was brought to my attention that we did not submit a plan to the county council for testing. I'm committing here today to ensuring that you have a plan by the end of this week. The county executive strongly believes that testing, even for those that are vaccinated, is an important addition to protecting our workforce and residents. This effort will expand with the acquisition of additional rapid tests made available through ongoing state and federal efforts, as well as county procurement.
Dr. Stoddard, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker for this public hearing, oh, I'm sorry.
If you don't mind, Ms. Kennedy, sorry. While Dr. Stoddard's still here, since we don't have a panel in front of us like normal, and I don't get to see you as often as we used to, Dr. Stoddard. Can I just ask, I'm still mulling over the discussion this morning, and I'm grateful for you acknowledging that the administration never sent over the implementation plan that you were required to send by the last Board of Health order that was supposed to arrive by August 20th. You often sit in front of us as the Board of Health. You provided great leadership as our emergency management director. You asked us to pass numerous Board of Health orders over the last 19 months to keep our public safe, even though they require great sacrifice to our members of the public and our small businesses in particular. We've lost a lot of small businesses, thousands of jobs, all in the service of keeping people alive and safe. And I support all those, and so did all my colleagues. We pass orders, and we require people to comply with them. We have had numerous discussions here about inspections of bars and restaurants, swimming pools, health clubs, you name it. How can we expect the public to comply with our Board of Health orders and insist that our employees comply with numerous Board of Health orders when your own administration is not in compliance, not with an order we passed last week, but an order we passed 2.5 months ago? Are you comfortable with the signal that sends to the public?
Well, I think that, I agree that we need to have done a better job with regard to providing this plan to the county council. Obviously on 8/20, as we were required, we did provide information related to the collection of the information with regard to proof of vaccination status, as well as the attestation process and associated things that were required by the law. The part that we needed to work more on was the implementation of the follow-on testing program, which obviously was influenced by the results of that attestation process, meaning the size and scope of the number of employees who either did not report or reported not to be vaccinated caused us to think differently about the number of tests that we would have to run and the methodology with which we would run to them. So yes, we need to provide you additional information as required about the implementation of the testing plan. We do think that what we provided was, a start to that, but obviously, we have more work to do on implementing a testing program. So
the order didn't just require you to submit the plan. The order required you to carry out the plan. The plan's just the beginning, and that was in August. So I'm raising this, Dr. Stoddard, not as just a public health concern, but because I really believe 20 years in public service that it affects confidence in government itself. People hate it when the government says, do as I say, not as I do. And I've heard that for 20 years. We hear that all the time from business owners whenever we raise the minimum wage or require sick leave or anything else. We always try to make sure the government has to play by the same rules as the private sector, which has far fewer resources. But in this matter, we have an administration that has just chosen not to comply with the health order. And we are sending hundreds, I guess, of firefighters and police officers out into the front lines every day to interact with the public. Their union wants them to be tested, those that are unvaccinated. there's no reason you can't just send test kits to every firehouse and every police station in the county. That's a limited number of work sites. This is not a global supply challenge. Why don't you just do that?
So you have to, so taking the example that you utilized, you have to have staff to actually oversee running the test. So
But they're EMTs. EMTs can run their own tests for everybody, right?
Right. So corrections has been doing testing for the majority of the pandemic every other week. And they have staff that are required to upload. It's not just the administration of the test. These are PCR tests that require an upload and an order essentially to have them be run. That's not an excuse to say we could not do this. It's a matter of having the personnel trained and personnel available in the firehouses to run those across multiple shifts that is posing to be the challenge. We're obviously trying to have a testing program that, is logistically feasible and doesn't detract from our ongoing services. As I said, we'll provide you additional information by the end of this week to speak to the strategy moving forward on testing. But obviously, it is just simply not as easy.
That's fine. I don't want to belabor it, but you've done more impressive things as far as I can. If I go to Dennis Avenue right now, I bet there's certified testers sitting there without a line in front of them. I don't see why they can't run around to each fire station every Friday, pick a day of the week. You have testing in all the schools for all the kids in Montgomery County. There's a lot more schools than there are firehouses. This seems like a much bigger challenge than just getting our police and firefighters tested that are on the front lines every day encountering the public. And that has, of course, generated much of the concern that is behind this bill that we're talking about. So it's very germane to this. Councilmember Rice, were you waving at me? Okay, Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. Just since we have Dr. Stoddard, I heard you say, sir, I think the county executive supports vaccine mandates. Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And so it's within his authority. Many of the mandates across the country have come from executives. In the case of the school system, that was negotiated with the unions. Our Montgomery College negotiated with the unions a mandate. Why then, if the county executive is supportive of a vaccine mandate, has he not sought to negotiate a vaccine mandate and put it in place himself?
So the county executive's view is that unlike certain sectors of our society where a service delay isn't life safety, he's particularly, and candidly, he's not as concerned about a vaccine mandate, even with regard to county employees in sectors where it's not an essential service that's being necessarily provided, where the provision of that service seconds matter. I think we talk about this all the time within our public safety spaces. So, if he believed that there would be no operational impact from the events that would occur in terms of termination, resignation, the portability of the fact that they can transfer to another department. There are vacancies all over the region in public safety. If he believed that there were not going to be any operational impacts from a vaccine mandate, I suspect he would be very supportive of what's been proposed. I think it's the mandatory nature of the discipline that follows and what that could create that is more troublesome for the county executive.
So then why hasn't he put forward a vaccine mandate for non-public safety folks? If that, I don't agree with the logic there. I don't think it will be borne out. I think people will get the shot like you're seeing in other cases. You're going to see the federal government do this countrywide. But then why then has there's 2,000 employees just under that we don't know their status or they're unvaccinated. Why has he not put in a mandate for those other non-public safety employees?
Well, obviously, we've been in the background trying to work on this, testing or vaccination process and get people more to register to understand the nature of the problem. But I don't, I certainly think that could be part of the conversation moving forward. I just think that we've been trying to play this out the way that we had discussed it back in August, rather than push ahead with something different immediately. Because we wanted to understand the scope of the potential consequences of doing it. So I think that's why we made this decision.
Well, I think I appreciate that. It seems I was confused when I heard that. It seems like inconsistent with what we're trying to do here, but I appreciate the answer. Thank you, Mr. President.
Right. Thank you. And Dr. Stein, I just hope you appreciate you have official county Twitter feeds every day telling people to get vaxxed and tested every day. I think some of the public would be fair to think the county government is being hypocritical if we can't even manage to test and vax our own employees under the penalty of under a Board of Health order that we passed unanimously 2.5 months later. How do we have any authority to tell the public to get vaccinated if we're not even vaccinating and testing our own employees.
No, we're obviously encouraging employees to be vaccinated. We're encouraging employees to be tested. We're not mandating and setting up a structure whereby if they fail to be tested, there are consequences for that, as well. So
that's different. The order is to test them, and that's not happening. Right? Am I saying anything that's inaccurate?
So the order, as my understanding is that we are required to provide a plan for how testing will occur, and what the testing results are for that. That's looking at the language of the Board of Health order. That's the way it reads to me.
And to execute it. Anyway, okay. Council member, well, that might be the end. Ms. Kennedy, I think we're back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could I just make
Hans had his hand up. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Councilmember
just
Reed.
one additional comment? I mean, you're referred to the county executive saying that he felt that other settings there wouldn't be life safety impacts from a requirement, but really the sector that's leading the way on this is our hospital systems and our healthcare providers. They're the ones who have really been firm on requirements, and many of these employees are healthcare employees. They're employees who are taking you to the hospital. They're administering life-saving healthcare, and many of them are taking people who may have serious symptoms. So I just don't think that that's a fair characterization of the issue. And I read a quote the other day from one of the CEOs of a health system who did have to confront some small number of employees who refused, and ultimately those employees are not with that hospital system anymore. And he still said it was the best decision he's ever made. And that's leadership. I wish we had that here. Thank you.
May I respond to that? I think the fire rescue service had, I think in the report we provided, they said if we lost 2% of our staff, which is I think 25 staff, we would have to reduce services in order to compensate for that. And so when I hear that from the fire chief, that's significant to me. And so I guess the point that the county executive was trying to make in his assertion is that as long as there are just consequences that could occur as a result of a vaccine mandate, and we just want to make sure that this legislation reflects those potential consequences, and we aren't just looking back on the fact that we've lost these personnel and therefore have to reduce services and are sort of not considering that in this position.
Right. Mr. Stott, Dr. Stott, I would just remind you too, the lack of staffing in public safety has been around for a long time. And I learned all that from Public Safety Chair Elrich when he was chair of it. And the staffing levels we have now for fire and police and 911 all reflect what he gave us in his proposed budget. So if there are staffing shortages now, he could have addressed that last spring, and maybe he'll address that in the coming budget. But he shouldn't just hide behind that issue now like it's a brand new issue when we've had these staffing shortages for quite a while. None of us want to see people leave over this. But we're also in the business of keeping the public safe, as are you. And when we're sending unvaccinated, untested people out there, and we have test kits sitting around and firefighters and police officers willing to be tested every week, and you're just not connecting the two, that seems like a big problem.
These are vacant. Council President, though, these are vacancies. These are not, it's not that there isn't the resources to pay people to hire fire department, hire people. We can't fill recruit classes. It's not that there isn't the money there. As you well know, you approved this budget. There are multiple recruit classes being run for fire rescue services. There's an additional staff starting for police that is not filled for January. So obviously, it's not just an issue of the number of staffed positions or positions in the budget that the county executive proposed or that the council approved. It's a matter of the fact that we cannot recruit and retain the staff that we need, and that is a national issue. To be clear, I think Prince George's County has 400 police vacancies. Fairfax County has 180. This is not
Sure.
something that is unique to Montgomery County, nor is it necessarily a budget issue.
I appreciate that. Then we'd probably all welcome a plan from the county executive about how to address it. The vice president and I have a bill before us today to try to address it. That's our best thinking. There are other ideas out there. We'd like to see the county executive and former public safety chair step up and address this problem if it's a longstanding problem that is going to result in longer response times in your view. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you. Our next speaker for this public hearing is Jeffrey Buttle. Mr. Buttle, you have 2 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin as soon as you're ready.
Good afternoon. IFF Local 1664 opposes Expedited Bill 3421. As introduced, this legislation has a number of issues that go well beyond that of a vaccine mandate. The Fire and Rescue Service is currently at a breaking point with its staffing levels. Most recently, between June and October of 2021, there have been 1,549 hours of involuntary overtime in order to keep Fire and Rescue Service units in service. This compares to a total of 420 hours for the entire calendar year of 2019, a 900% increase. A recent review of data indicates 911 call volume has increased, and EMS unit availability is currently being strained due to hospital transfer wait times of up to 2 hours. In addition, there are approximately 70 firefighters that are currently unable to work due to injuries. All of these factors combined together are warning signs of a fatigued workforce. MCFRS estimates that approximately 100 career firefighters could eventually be separated from the workforce as a result of this legislation. If this were to happen, it would plunge Montgomery County into a public safety crisis where it would no longer be able to provide for the safe, efficient, and effective delivery of fire and rescue emergency services. This legislation, while addressing limited medical exemptions, completely excludes exemptions for religious reasons. Employees with bona fide religious medical exemptions should not have their beliefs silenced without any regard or consideration of such beliefs. Legislation also has a significant number of legal flaws, including the exclusion of collective bargaining and the overreach of the County Council's authority by mandating disciplinary penalties on executive branch employees. These are complicated matters that require meaningful and substantial discussion, and we look forward to the committee work session where these important details can be discussed in greater depth, where all stakeholders are invited to have a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buttle. Our next speaker is Karen Lovejoy. Ms. Lovejoy, you have 2 minutes, and you may begin when you're ready.
All right. I hope everybody can hear me.
We can.
Great. Let's talk facts. The United States is ranking among the worst COVID outcomes around the world. This is because local and state governments have followed federal guidelines, apparently doing no independent research. We accepted the narrative that there was no treatment for the virus, and our only hope was to wait for a vaccine, suppressing the voices of our best and brightest doctors. These doctors have provided us with successful early at-home treatment protocols that they say could have ended our pandemic in 2020. Last year, they were trying to educate us. Now they're plainly saying that people are not dying from COVID, but from medical malfeasance. That is no treatment or wrong treatment. Though media suggests otherwise, manufacturers state the vaccines do not keep people from getting, transmitting, or dying from COVID. Israel is touting one of the largest vaccinated rates, yet 65% of COVID hospitalizations are from fully vaccinated. In the United States and elsewhere, vaccinated people are dying from COVID. Hospitals in the U.S. are reporting that 45% of COVID hospitalizations are from fully vaccinated. In an August study done in a medical facility, fully vaccinated personnel were locked in a ward. No one else came in or out. They gave each other COVID. And when nose swabs were taken, their viral loads were 250 times higher than that of the unvaccinated. The vaccinated were the super spreaders. This is in the Lancet. Vaccination is not working, but we're doing more of it. What's the definition of insanity? Instead of listening to our doctors and scientists, we have allowed the pharmaceutical companies to push a very expensive vaccine agenda compared to treatments that cost pennies and are saving lives and ending pandemics in other countries last year.
Ms. Lovejoy, I'm sorry to interrupt. I am so sorry to interrupt, but your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony.
I just want to ask you to...
Our next speaker is Marco Aguilar. Mr. Aguilar, you have 2 minutes as well. You may begin when you're ready.
Are you looking for me? It's
well, oh, you're here now. Okay, well, I will come to you. I asked for Mr. Aguilar first, and then we'll come back to you, sir.
Okay, come back to me. Okay,
Yes,
thank
I
you.
will. I didn't see you on the list. Thank you.
No
Mr.
problem.
Aguilar. Thank you. Mr. Aguilar, are you there?
He was just on camera. There he is.
Mr. Aguilar? There he is. Oh, that's Mr. Hughey. Okay, Mr. Hughey, why don't you go ahead because I don't see there. Is Mr. Aguilar there? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. You can go whenever you're ready, sir. You have 2 minutes.
Come before you today, just like many other people across the world. I'm asking you why you want my life. What wrong have I done to you that you deserve to punish me and terminate me from my job, from my existence, from my abilities to support my own family? I'm a single father, 14-year-old daughter, have an 81-year-old grandmother. I work for the health department. I work for school health services. I work at an immunization clinic called Rocking Horse Road Center. I'm not anti-vax. From the beginning of this pandemic, I've always worked, and I'm still working to this very day. They sent me to Dennis Ave. I was one of the first individuals out on the front line with a raincoat. No PPE was given to me with the raincoat. I worked every single vaccination site, every single COVID testing site in the rain, in the snow, in the heat, nonstop, no breaks, no water, no bathroom breaks. We did not eat until the very end. Where were any of you? Did any of you work frontline? Did any of you were out there when the 75 and better were out there 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours standing in the cold? Did any of you come out and show your face? No, the only time you show your face is when you need a press conference. Look, all of you are still working on Zoom. We stayed on the front line. We still are front line. We haven't stopped. And if anyone was rejected, see this, it was by your mandate. You weren't here listening to the stories. You weren't there consulting the people that are symptomatic, helping them fill out paperwork face to face without any vaccine, without any help from the government. We are the front lines. We've done everything we can, and then you seek my life. You want to cut me off. You want to strangle me for supporting my family, and I have done nothing wrong but help this county. I love my job. I love the county. I love the residents we serve. Ask the hundreds and thousands of people that saw me wearing this jacket.
Mr. Aguilar, thank you so much for your testimony.
Ask them and they'll tell you.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, sir, but your time is up. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to Mr. Hughey. I don't know if I said that correctly. I hope I did. Mr. Mark Hughey, you have 2 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin as soon as you're ready, sir.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Yugi. I'm an 8-year veteran of the Montgomery County Police Department. I'm here today to speak to you out against Bill 3421. For almost 2 years now, my colleagues and I have been working to keep this county safe throughout the pandemic. There's been time we were revered as frontline heroes, and now we are faced with termination because of this extreme and unnecessary bill. First, mandatory vaccinations violate the concept of informed consent. No medicine, therapeutic, or vaccine, no matter how great the technology, should ever be forced upon anyone. No one should be threatened or coerced or told that they should be fired and unable to provide for their families should they refuse a treatment. That's not voluntary consent. This bill would take medical decision out of the hands of individuals and their doctors and put it into the hands of the council. I took an oath to protect and serve the community and even pay the ultimate sacrifice. But with all due respect, you're not in charge of my body. Recent polling shown in this county is 90% vaccination rate, far above the experts say that is herd immunity. Why then the push for this mandate. Why now? According to CDC, in the last 7 days, cases have dropped more than 23%, 1.88 as of yesterday, and that's the lowest in the entire pandemic. There is no need for this extreme measure. Contrast with our success of COVID-19 with the crisis of the police recruitment and retention. This bill will force early retirement and lead to many resignations and terminations. 911 response times will be even longer, meaning the difference between life and death for some of your constituents. This bill will be the straw that breaks the camel's back for many of our members who are experiencing all-time low morale. The recent FOP polling data demonstrates that. And you think we are bluffing? Did the citizens of this county hire you to play chicken with their safety? The bottom line is we reject the coercion measure. It's an extreme and wholly unnecessary. And we pray for the citizens of this county if this bill becomes law. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Our next speaker for the public hearing is Lee Holland. Mr. Holland, you have 2 minutes. You may begin as soon as you're ready.
Good afternoon, members of the council. I'm Lee Holland, the president of FOP Lodge 35, and on behalf of more than 1,500 members of this organization, we oppose Bill 3421. Our opposition isn't from being anti-vaccine. Instead, we oppose this bill for several reasons: the potential impact of county services, the repealing of collective bargaining rights, the overstepping of the council authority and the powers of the executive, and the overstepping the executive authority as the employer. It is no secret that the county has been plagued with recruitment and retention challenges within our police department over the last year. For example, we have lost over 40 sworn police officers since July 1st, 2020, which does not include the 27 abolished positions during the last budget. In addition, over the last several months, we have seen a significant increase in the number of resignations due to the labor unrest and the political environment in which we find ourselves in. That dynamic presents additional challenges given the fact that 25% of the police department is eligible to retire at this very moment. In all, the workforce density presents significant stability and readiness challenges that this county has never faced and, quite frankly, is not prepared to address. Here's our challenge. Recent polling of our membership shows approximately 300 officers are considering leaving if this bill passes. These numbers are real and scare me as a county resident, and they should scare everyone. These are staggering statistics given how serious our members take being vaccinated and primarily seeing vaccine as an important public safety issue. As of today, at least 70% of my members have been voluntarily vaccinated against COVID-19. That is one of the highest vaccination rates for a major police department in the region, if not the nation. It's incredibly unfortunate that this vaccine has been so politicized on both sides as it has caused a rift in our society. Lodge 35 has encouraged our members to get vaccinated and have worked to make vaccinations a priority. In fact, back in January, we partnered with the county at the public safety mass vaccination site, which was tremendously successful and which I know saved lives. I'm extremely proud of that. But there's another side of this, which cannot be overlooked. As controversial as it is, we also understand and respect the sanctity that each member has to make their own healthcare choices. In fact, as their representative, we must respect those choices. There are a number of reasons that people choose not to get vaccinated. Some have already had COVID-19, some have underlying medical conditions, some take religious exemption, some have personal objection. Whatever the basis of their decision is, it is their own decision and one that should be made between them, their physician, their families, and their God, not their employer. This bill is a dangerous
Mr. Holland, excuse me for interrupting, but your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker for this public hearing is Stephen Phelps. Mr. Phelps, as soon as you're ready, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. My name is Stephen Phelps. I am a 30-year county resident, and I am a 28-year veteran for Montgomery County Police. And of that, about 20 years on our SWAT team. So I'm not a risk-adverse person, and I'm not scared of a vaccine. But to follow up on what Officer Holland said, a mandate does not protect the residents of this county, and it forces individuals to make a choice between their career and a experimental medical procedure, which is not fair and not very American in any way. And I'll quote a couple different statistics so you can think about things critically, and then I'd ask that the council think about things emotionally. The director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, stated in August that to quote, vaccines continue to work well for COVID with regard to severe illness and death, and they prevent it. But what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission. Recently, September 30th, Dr. Sabranian from Harvard conducted a large-scale study, 68 different nations, almost 3,000 counties in the U.S., and found no discernible level or relationship between vaccination levels and transmission levels. More than in Israel, in this study, 60% fully vaccinated people in the population, and they have the highest cases per million in the last 7 days as of that study. Iceland and Portugal have rates of 75% population vaxxed, and they are some of the highest rates of transmission, as opposed to some countries like Vietnam and South Africa that have about 10% of the vaccination populated and a much lower transmission rate. In the U.S., this holds true also. 4 out of 5 counties with the highest fully vaccinated rates, anywhere between 99 and 84%, are still considered high transmission areas of CDC. And conversely,
Mr. Phelps, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony today. Our next speaker for this public hearing is Nick Bonturi. Mr. Bonturi, when you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
Do you have 2 devices on? Because there's a little bit of an echo.
I shouldn't.
Okay. Okay, you may begin when you're ready. Well, we can hear you, so that's good. So
Okay.
you may begin when you're ready.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Nick Bontor. I'm a police officer with Montgomery County. I've been with the department about 10 years. I'm here to express my concerns today about passing Bill 34-21. I want to start by being very clear that I'm not anti-vaccine. A large portion of the people I know and love have been vaccinated, most by choice, some forced. What I am is anti-government overreach and anti-fear-based force. I'm anti the government in any way, telling a law-abiding, hard-working, honest, contributing member of society they must get a needle put in their arm to keep their job, or else you're fired, or else your 10 years of service is flushed down the drain, or else you lose your pension and health benefits, or else you can't collect unemployment, or else you lose everything you worked towards since you were a kid. The mission of the Montgomery County Police Department is to safeguard life and property, preserve the peace, prevent and detect crime, enforce the law, and protect the rights of all citizens. We're committed to working in partnership with the community to identify and resolve issues that impact public safety. That's verbatim what the department's mission is. Officers of this department and nationwide go above and beyond the call of duty, regardless of their own safety and health, to help people. That's why we signed up for this job. Let us do our job. We did our job when most people worldwide were sheltering in place. We exposed ourselves and our families, sacrificed the safety and health of everyone we knew and loved when so much was unknown. Almost every officer I know still went to work every day. A little bit about myself. My wife was pregnant during COVID. She was roughly 3 months pregnant when the world was seemingly ending and you couldn't turn on the TV without seeing media coverage of how dangerous and deadly this virus was. For nearly 2 months, I slept on the floor of my own garage for fear that I would infect my wife and my future child. While being turned away and refused access at the doctor's office during my wife's appointments, I was turning right around and going back to work an hour later. When most people I knew were adapting to this new way of life, either teleworking comfortably from home or getting paid to just stay at home, packed my lunch and went to work. I'm not a doctor, clearly, but I look at everything from a pragmatic, realistic point of view. Now that the dust has settled, it does not take a genius to see this virus is not as deadly as we originally thought. It is clear to me this has become too politicized, and I don't think I'm the crazy one. This is wrong, unethical, immoral, and dangerous. This is a very slippery slope. Thank you.
Mr. Bonturi, yes, thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker for the public hearing is Dr. Ruby Lathan. Dr. Lathan, you have 2 minutes for your testimony and you may begin when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Ruby Lathan. I am a holistic nutritionist and director of Roadmap to Holistic Health. And I would like to testify in regards to this mandate. I would reiterate, I am also not anti-vax. However, our proposed amendment addresses those who are not eligible for or who do not choose to take the mandated vaccine. When I was diagnosed with cancer in 2007, I was given the option of surgery or to research alternative treatment for myself. Through my own research, I chose holistic treatment and was able to heal myself using a plant-based diet and supplementation and have since remained cancer-free. I propose that we allow a similar option to county employees. Recent studies published in the BMJ Nutrition Prevention and Health Journal published in June of 2021 show that those who adopt a plant-based diet have a 73% reduction in experiencing severe COVID symptoms or even contracting COVID. This is due to the fact that the plant-based lifestyle effectively addresses the underlying conditions that precipitate severe COVID symptoms or death. Given that the objective of this mandate is to ostensibly save lives and provide a safe working environment, I ask that the council provide a scientifically proven safe alternative, which would involve employees taking an online course that comprehensively teaches the principles of plant-based lifestyle, along with weekly COVID testing. Everyone should be given a choice in their own medical decisions without the fear of loss of employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker today is Amy Miller. Amy, you may begin when you're ready. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Millar, and I'm testifying on behalf of UFCW Local 1994 in opposition to this bill. I'd like to begin by being very clear. We are unequivocally pro-vaccination. We believe that everyone who can be vaccinated should be vaccinated. We fought to have frontline workers vaccinated as soon as possible. We publicized our leaders getting vaccinated. We urged members since early March to get the vaccine, and we have not stopped educating our members about the safety and efficacy of vaccinations. We are proud that Montgomery County leads the nation in vaccinations. This success is due in no small part to our members who pivoted from their normal job duties, quickly set up vaccination clinics, and got shots in the arms of hundreds of thousands of county residents. This success is also due to our county's excellent public health officials, the same officials that worked with the unions and the executive to develop the current vaccination and testing policy. Local 1994 is pro-vaccine, but we oppose this legislation for several reasons. First, the current vaccination and testing policy was developed with the county using public health guidelines with the goal of keeping our members and the public safe. Similar vaccine and testing policies have been enacted in every single surrounding jurisdiction, with some counties also offering incentives for employees to get vaccinated. We oppose the legislation because it oversteps the council's authority to mandate conditions of employment and impose discipline. That authority and responsibility lies squarely with the county executive. We have serious concerns about the unintended consequence of this bill as well. It's not just public safety. Many departments are seriously short-staffed. Ride-On, for example, has over 90 driver vacancies. There's a national shortage of CDL holders. Last month, you may have heard the Massachusetts governor had to activate the National Guard because of that shortage to transport kids to school. If even a few Ride-On drivers are terminated because of the legislation, which routes will be canceled? How will it impact residents who depend on that public transportation to get to work? That's just one example. Finally, we oppose this legislation because it's an assault on our fundamental collective bargaining rights. The bill specifically excludes any collective bargaining on the mandate, its implementation, and its effects.
Ms. Millar, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker today is Matthew Plessia. Mr. Plessia, I hope I pronounced that correctly. You have 2 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. My name is Matthew Plessia. My wife and I are both Montgomery County residents and also police officers with Montgomery County Police. Let me start by saying that I chose to take the first 2 doses of the COVID vaccination in February of this year. At that time, we believed it would prevent us from contracting the virus, but it only proved to us that we had a false sense of security, which led to another countywide mass mandate because of an increase in positive cases. Still today, we're under that mass mandate, even though the majority of the county has received the vaccination. What we do know is that the vaccine does not prevent, cure, or make anyone immune, nor does it prevent someone from spreading the virus. Additionally, precautions like social distancing and wearing masks may help, but just like the vaccination, there is still a chance we can still be infected and spread. This has been proven. My concern today is that the county council is proposing legislation of a bill that threatens the jobs and livelihoods of its hardworking county workers. If passed, this bill will further diminish an already exiting workforce in our police and fire rescue departments, who additionally are having trouble finding new employees, which further risk the safety of our communities. If this vaccine does not make us immune cure, then why mandate it? Is this mandate for public safety, or is this more about political perception and agendas? Why not allow the choice? If this is such an emergent situation and we need to mandate employees to take a vaccination and wear a mask, then why aren't we being paid as public safety employees for such an emergency? If this council is truly concerned about its residents and their safety, and is not just focused on political perception, then they will not pass this mandate. What is proven is that if we protect the jobs and livelihood of our county workers and our public safety employees, then it benefits our community by providing them with the safety and assistance that they need and should receive at their most desperate and helpless moments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker is Joe St. George. Ms. St. George, you have 2 minutes. You may begin when you're ready. We see you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. My name is Joe St. George. I'm a lawyer, former medical malpractice defense lawyer, and chair and founder of the HBCU College of Plant-Based Lifestyle Medicine, which is a new 501c3 who's focused on educating and training minority physicians in how to prescribe food as medicine and use lifestyle interventions to address chronic disease. We wrote this bill because I'm also a small bowel cancer survivor, and I too chose a plant-based lifestyle as opposed to surgery and chemotherapy. I just had brain surgery in March, and I'm here today because of my trust in God and the plant-based method. But we are proposing the plant-based mandate option to give people a choice who need to understand that this mandate is about dealing with severe COVID. We proposed the amendment because there's many who have sincerely held beliefs, and this amendment provides a form of exemption for all who object to the vaccine, but holds everyone accountable for reducing severe COVID. Our amendment is simple. Number one, that anyone who doesn't want to get vaccinated, they take a 30-day online plant-based lifestyle medicine course, provide proof of participation, monthly grocery bills, and they participate in weekly testing. We believe that the amendment is a great solution because several scientific studies have shown that a plant-based diet provides 73% reduced COVID severity and even the contractions of COVID. In other words, a plant-based lifestyle following the 10 laws of health, which are sunshine, air, fresh air, abstaining from toxic substances, and exercise, collectively are as effective as the vaccine. So therefore, in summary, we believe that this mandate of mandating the option of choosing either to be vaccinated or taking this course, which can result in immediate results in the change of the blood of an individual when they choose to eat plant-based, will give the person, each employee, the ability to address the underlying issues that are the primary causes of death. We believe our bill
St. George, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
For everyone.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. President, that wraps up the speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Apologies if my internet is going in and out here in the building. Okay, so that closes this public hearing. Thanks to all of our speakers. Item 7 is a public hearing on a supplemental appropriation of the county government's FY22 operating budget, Department of Transportation, $720,300 for COVID-19 research demonstration grant. The T&E committee work session is tentatively scheduled for October 28th, 2021. There are no public speakers for this hearing, so this hearing is now closed. Item 8 is a public hearing on a resolution to amend the FY22 transportation fees, charges, and fares based on the fare equity study. The T&E committee work session is tentatively scheduled for the same date, October 28th, 2021. There are no public speakers for this date, for this item, so the public hearing is now closed. Item 9 is a public hearing and action on supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY22 operating budget, Department of Health and Human Services, University of Maryland Office of Research Administration, short-term housing assistance for human trafficking survivors, a path to permanent housing, $300,000, source of funds is a University of Maryland grant. There are no public speakers for this item either, so the HHS committee recommends approval. Council Vice President, did you want to get in here?
Yeah, just very quickly, Mr. President. This is, and I'm still getting my bearings straight from that last public hearing, but we received the good news that the Department of Justice issued a grant through the University of Maryland and is now partnering with the Department of Health and Human Services to carry out an important initiative to provide rapid rehousing for the victims and survivors of human trafficking. This council and previous councils has been a leader in this space, and we commend the Department of Health and Human Services for their partnership and alliance with the University of Maryland. This will assist 15 families who are in crisis, and the committee recommended fully unanimously that we approve the $300,000 as you just mentioned. So I yield back to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Yep, it's a terrific idea. All those in favor of the HHS committee's recommendation, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Excellent. Now we can move on to the legislative session for day 28. Item 10A is the first. It's the introduction of Bill 3621, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, e-scooters, operating requirements and registration. Let me turn it over to Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am pleased to introduce this bill. It regulates low-speed electric scooters, also known as e-scooters. And I'd like to thank Vice President Albornoz for co-sponsoring. This bill is based on Bill 820, which was also bicycles and e-scooters operating requirements and registration. And we had the public hearing, and it was held on June 9th, 2020. And it went before T&E and Public Safety. We held a joint committee work session on June 25th, 2020. The bill did not go to full council for action, as thinking of the time frame here, we were dealing with the pandemic, and enacting a law regulating e-scooters when we wanted people initially to remain at home was not a high priority. So the bill subsequently expired September of this year, September 3rd. And this bill, it deals with, it'll establish a much needed registration, operating requirements for electric scooters in the county. The goal is to reduce injuries associated with the use of e-scooters by setting reasonable age requirements, limiting speeds, and requiring helmets in some circumstances. The bill also states that e-scooters must be parked in an upright standing position and in a manner that does not obstruct accessibility. It should not interfere with places of access for people with disabilities. And this, in my opinion, is a common sense bill to encourage the use of e-scooters while making sure that people remain safe. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with Chairman Katz on this very important issue. And I think it was serendipitous that we did not come back to this piece of legislation, because what's occurred over the last year and a half has just affirmed the need for us to provide reasonable regulation that ensures the safety and security of our residents, while also taking advantage of this new and emerging technology that adds mobility options, particularly within dense communities. So look forward to the ongoing discussion, and I think this is a good bill.
Thank you. Okay, that bill is introduced. Item 10B is Bill 3721, Animal Control Services Advisory Committee established. Public hearing is scheduled for November 9th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as you all know, the Department of Animal Services was branched out into its own agency outside of the Montgomery County Police Department last year. And as we also know, we received lots of calls from constituents, and many of my colleagues yourselves have pets who are members of our families. And they have been so important and so vital, particularly during the pandemic, to address social and emotional needs. And I'm working on trying to get a pet in our family, and maybe one day I'll be successful in breaking through and lobbying, but not quite there yet. This is an opportunity for us to create another check and balance and another advisory function that can assist the Department of Animal Services in carrying out their critically important mission. It can help in the recruitment of volunteers and also in the establishment of policy. We had a robust conversation with our animal services team, and one of the items we talked about was their need for multicultural outreach. And so this is another opportunity for us to recruit a diverse set of residents who can guide and advise the department on a number of important matters. So I hope you'll all join me in supporting this legislation, and I look forward to it going through the council process as well.
Councilmember Novato.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, and both Fez and Rafa agree that as their grandmother, I should be definitely supporting such an important piece of legislation.
I wanted to be listed as a co-sponsor as well. Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
I too want to be listed as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
And Councilmember Jawando.
I three would like to be listed as a co-sponsor.
Terrible.
Councilmember Rice.
4.
Councilmember Reamer.
Councilmember Glass.
Trying to get my Bob. Yeah.
Going once, going twice. Okay, I think I have everybody. All right, that bill is introduced as well. Thank you, Council Vice President. The next one is Bill 3821, Economic Development Fund, Local Business Child Care Grant Program established. Item 10C is that introduction. Let me first recognize Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm actually going to yield to my colleague and friend, Councilmember Novato, on this one. We work together on this, and she's been so involved in early childhood and education. It's directly connected to it. So I'll defer to her to go first, and I'll go second. Councilmember Novato.
Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz. Well, it was a pleasure working with you on this particular piece of legislation and all my colleagues as we have throughout the years sought to enhance the accessibility to quality childcare, but affordability continues to be an issue. And especially right now, as we are all examining all the different ways in which COVID-19 has impacted our working families and our economic recovery, this particular piece of legislation, I think, adds to all of that effort. And it makes it, I think, so timely and so critical. So just want to say that I think that this is going to be very helpful. And we all know that a lot of times when we talk about all of the different types of assistance that is available for our residents, many times are targeted to low income. And it turns out that, childcare is quite expensive. And so to be able to have a program like this, where people can also take advantage of the flexible spending accounts and have employers help with that as well, I think it's going to become a very important tool in terms of helping our folks find their footing and continue to address issues of economic sufficiency. So very important on so many areas, and just really appreciate Councilmember Albornoz working with me on this particular piece of legislation.
Thank you. That was extremely well said. I think this legislation, while modest in its overall amount, helps to accomplish three things. The first is, as all of us have been reading, women have been leaving the workforce in droves throughout the pandemic. And one of the main reasons for that is, as Councilmember Navarro mentioned, the affordability of childcare. And so this will help our working families, but this is also second an economic development bill, because this will be a tool that small local businesses will be able to utilize to help them in their recruitment of talented leaders here in our community who can work for their respective agencies. And finally, this just demonstrates another good example of a public-private partnership. The Chambers of Commerce were very involved in the development of this bill, and while we had to put it on hold through the pandemic, it's perfect timing to bring it back now at this point. And this will be one of many efforts that we will take moving forward in addressing the holistic economic development needs, but also early childhood and education needs of our families. So hope you'll all join us. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Council members Katz, Friedson, Reamer, and Hucker for also being listed as co-sponsors as well.
Good. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll say that I was not an original co-sponsor when this was first introduced because I wanted to learn more about it, but for all the reasons that Vice President Albornoz and Councilmember Navarro just articulated, understanding the local economy, the needs and pressures put on our families, and particularly our women and women of color who need these types of services, I'm proud to be a co-sponsor this go around. So thank you all.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much. I'd definitely like to be added as a co-sponsor again as we look to Kerwin and look to increasing early care and education opportunities and the true implementation of the blueprint. It's going to be imperative. I know that Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Albornoz, you and I are working together on a piece of legislation that deals specifically with the actual providers themselves. And so this is a perfect accoutrement to that. And so I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Accoutrement. I couldn't pull that off. Councilmember Friedson.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to say that I'm proud to again be a co-sponsor of this. It's really critical. This is a moral imperative. It's an economic development necessity. The pandemic has made it even more important. We've heard folks refer to the she session as council members Navarro and Albornoz just noted. The gains that we were making in women in the workforce have much of which have been lost, and we have to gain them back. And we're going to have to be intentional about the tools that we use in order to help make that happen. It's not going to happen by chance. It's going to have to happen by choices that we make. And this is one tool in the toolkit. It's not going to solve every challenge, but it can help move us in a better direction as we look at all the other tools that we're going to need to do in order to have a more inclusive economy. We have a place where we need dual income families to be able to afford the quality of life in Montgomery County. And we're going to need to continue to do that to have the type of economy, the type of workforce, type of community that has always made Montgomery County what it is. So thank you to the lead sponsors on this, and pleased to be able to work together with you on it.
Ditto. Councilmember Juana.
Thank you. Yes, thank you to council members Navarro and Albornoz for leading this effort. Anything we can do to reduce the cost of childcare for our families is absolutely important. It's economic development. It's the right thing morally to do. It's also infrastructure. And we're having that debate nationally too, that without a comprehensive plan for this in the nation, the state, and the county, and we have to, this is a great example of us doing our part and trying to have an impact. We will not be able to realize our full potential. And that's why you're seeing these conversations nationally. So really commend you for putting this forward and as part of our broader effort to address this issue, and would love to be added as a co-sponsor as well. Thank you.
Great. I think that's everybody. Okay. So that bill is introduced as well. Thank you, colleagues. Item 10D is the introduction of Bill 3921, Taxation Public Safety Officers, Emergency Communication Specialist, Property Tax Credit Established. I'm proud to work with Council Vice President Albornoz in introducing this important legislation. As we've discussed earlier today, we've had troubling trends for years in recruitment and retention within the Montgomery County Police Department. We've had skyrocketing overtime and training costs due to job vacancies in our fire and rescue service, and we've had very high attrition rates in our emergency call center. This bill is a measure to address the issues of recruitment and retention that have impacted our emergency service and our public safety institutions. It establishes a property tax credit for police, career firefighters, and emergency communication center operators who live in Montgomery County in their first 5 years of employment. The legislation sends an important signal to our first responders and our emergency personnel that we value and appreciate their work, that they have our steadfast support, and that they're valued members of our community. And most importantly, it encourages our first responders and emergency personnel to live and invest right here in Montgomery County. We all benefit The whole community benefits when first responders live in the communities they serve. Neighborhoods are safer. Police community relations are enhanced when more first responders are visible and able to send their kids to our schools, join our neighborhood associations, attend our houses of worship, and become more familiar with and more invested in all of our great neighborhoods. But unfortunately, the high cost of housing in Montgomery County discourages many of our public safety employees from living here, and they live in outlying counties. The bill seeks to address those issues by offsetting the tremendously high housing costs in Montgomery County and incentivizing our first responders to decide to live closer to where they work. The property tax credit will serve as an additional incentive to attract qualified candidates to become first responders in the county. As we've heard today, we've had trouble filling up our recruitment classes in both police and fire, and make us more competitive in the whole region. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think for context too, it's also important for everyone to know that Howard County is pursuing a similar path, and this was done through enabling legislation passed in Annapolis for local jurisdictions to address the very real and raw recruitment and retention issues that we're not just facing here in the county, but that's happening across the country and certainly in the state. And there have already been questions, as you would expect there would be, about why this isn't being extended to other key categories where we are also having recruitment and retention issues. And at the moment, we're not enabled to provide this level of tax credit to other categories of critical positions. But we've already had some preliminary conversations with our colleagues within the delegation, and we suspect that given the recruitment and retention issues we're having in social workers, nurses, and in so many other categories, that this is something that we will need to pursue aggressively to address the social safety net needs and the public safety needs of our residents, which is the foundation of the services that we need to be able to provide effectively as a government. So I'm proud to work with our council president on this. I hope you'll all join us as we go through the iterative legislation process as well and refine this measure. But this will be an important tool, and also, frankly, just demonstrates that we do hear and we do appreciate and respect the sacrifices of our first responders. We know how challenging this work is. We know how particularly challenging it's been over the last 2 years. And this, along with other measures that we'll be looking at moving forward, is aimed at ensuring that we continue to have the best and brightest first responders here in Montgomery County. So I look forward to the ongoing discussion, and thank you again, Mr. President.
Thank you. Council Member Novato.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilmember Albornoz. This is absolutely an important incentive. I appreciate, Councilmember Albornoz, you addressing the other issues, because it's something that I'm particularly very interested in, which is how do we also extend this to our teachers and other employees. We know for years we've been tracking the data of how many of our employees have to live outside the county. And then, of course, we have lots of conversations about the importance to have employees that reflect the community and that can establish a connection to the community, and that is difficult if you don't live here. And so I think this is another particular component that should be helpful. And I look forward to working with all of you, also with our partners in the state legislature, to push for enabling legislation to address these other categories of employees. But really do appreciate it and would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Vice President. I associate myself with what you have said and what Councilmember Navarro has said, and I too would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thanks. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Appreciate it. For all the reasons stated, I also would be happy to be listed as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to both of you, Councilmember Albornoz and Councilmember Hucker, for introducing this. It's something we've been talking about, and as one of the many ways we can incentivize and increase retention, but also improve police community relations and public safety knowledge of the community. I want to just mention that aspect. I think it's been alluded to a couple times, that it's, and that's something I think we can maybe even explore more as it works through the process of where people live, but and then in the context of the tax credit. Also think Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Albanaz's point of expansion, in addition to looking at other high sector needs, teachers, nurses, mental health professionals, and then along with our work to try to have some workforce housing, right, and address things on the rental side as well, because obviously it's the property tax. Can't do everything in one bill. This is a great bill, though. And for all those reasons, I'd love to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor and just take a moment to reflect on the complex conversations that we've been having this afternoon as we hear from many of our county employees, and recognize that there are a lot of different ways that we can help them, as we know that they help us and help with our great quality of life here in Montgomery County. So I'm pleased to support this piece of legislation.
Thanks. And Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Terrific. Is that everyone? Okay, thanks. That bill is introduced. Thank you for your support. Next, we can move on to the call of bill for final reading. Expedited Bill 2921 is first, the Contracts and Procurement Minority-Owned Businesses Sunset Date Amendments. I was very happy to work with Council Chair Novato, and wanted to thank all of you who testified and wrote in in support of this. Our MFD program has really been a great program to help our small businesses owned by women, by people of color, by entrepreneurs with disabilities, either as prime contractors or as subcontractors. And the purpose is to remedy longstanding discrimination against those businesses in Montgomery County in our procurement. It's been a vital lifeline for those small businesses, and it's been essential for our county to help us meet our racial equity and social justice goals, especially where we're trying to build long-term wealth equity. Despite the fact that programs like this in other jurisdictions have been a target of lawsuits, because of that, a disparity study is strongly recommended, really, and essentially required by the Richmond decision every 5 years. The last one was conducted in 2014 under the previous executive, County Executive Leggett. Unfortunately, the current executive has not completed the legally required disparity study now twice over 3 years. So this bill extends the deadline and tasks the procurement director and the county attorney with completing the report, which has been required by law. I'm very grateful to Council Chair Novato for working together on this, and to all the members of the GO committee. Council Chair Novato.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee voted 3-0 on September 30th to approve the bill as introduced. We did, of course, have a public hearing on July 20th with no speakers. I do want to, again, reiterate that our last disparity study was done back in 2014, and it showed that there was still a clear need and benefit for this program. Of course, looking back, we could not have imagined that the world would look the way it does now. Our current situation only further highlights the importance of this program and the role of our procurement process in terms of how it can support economic activity among historically underserved populations. In 2019, this council extended both the sunset date and the deadline for a new disparity study to this year. Obviously, the disparity study deadline of July 1st, 2021 has not been met due to extenuating circumstances, which means while we can anecdotally see the positive impact of this program, we lack the current data needed to make a decision. So on July 30th, this council proposed and approved a special appropriation of $700,000 for the study to finally get underway. And this bill was sent over to align the deadlines with the appropriations. I will also mention that in terms of a little historic context, even the previous administration did not voluntarily send over budget requests for the disparity study. And it was once again the Government Operations Committee that pushed forward with, included in the budget, the requisite $600,000 to complete the study back in 2014, because we understood that it was going to be so important to have the data and the information. So again, this is one more important component of our work. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the census data and see how Montgomery County continues to grow and how its diversity continues to grow and how entrepreneurial communities of color are. And we need to ensure that these extraordinarily resilient entrepreneurs have access to important opportunities to continue to grow their businesses and continue to contribute to the economic activity in the county. And so this study, I think, is very much part of all of that effort. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Drummer to just go through any other particular highlights. But as I shared, the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee has recommended this 3-0. And I want to thank my colleagues, Council members Katz and Friedson, for their work on this.
Chair Navarro has explained the bill completely. I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Drummer. So there you have it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to all the members of the GO Committee. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I remember that all too well. I was council president that year, working with the county executive, and we had to insist that this happen. This is incredibly important, and I want folks to understand that there are so many in our community who believe that racial disparities don't exist when it comes to people in general, when it comes to businesses, but every time we do this study, it's glaring in terms of the information that we still receive, that there are plenty of networks out there that still exclude people of color from being a part of doing business with. And that exists inside of our own county government. That's the reality. There are many times in which we have stories of individuals who come to us who have been challenged with procurement processes in the county who feel as though they've been discriminated against. And I really want to thank Ash Shetty and folks in the department who have continued to try and revamp some of the practices that we have in place. But that's why this is so important. There are so many residents that we have here in Montgomery County who actually don't do business here in Montgomery County, who actually do business in our neighboring jurisdictions because they can't get footing here in Montgomery County. That's concerning. And it's certainly reflective of what we've seen and the rhetoric that we've seen over the past couple of years. So it should come as no surprise that this continues to be a challenge that businesses owned by our people of color and women continue to face. Just the emails from what we saw in the NFL highlight what continues to exist in our community and why it is that we need to continue to make sure that we're pushing towards a more inclusive and more welcoming community. And so for that, I really want to thank you, Councilmember Navarro, for always being at the forefront. Thank you very much to all of the GO committee, and thanks to all the colleagues. This is really important to businesses across this county who we will continue to signal to say we want to be a welcoming place for everyone. So thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Glass, did you want to get in this? I didn't know it was this one or the previous one. Okay. Okay. Well, we have before us a recommendation, unanimous recommendation from the GO committee. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Jawando?
Yes.
Mr. Jawando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes.
Terrific. That measure passes as well. Thank you all for your support. Good day's work. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
TED Talk with TEDx in Ashbury Park, New Jersey. And if you want to